So the secondary objectives in Warhammer 40K, are they working at the moment, or do they need a bit of an update? Hello and welcome back to Auspex Tactics, where today I thought we'd have a discussion around some of the secondary objectives, and two of the biggest issues I think that they have right now. I'm sure most people will be well aware of what they are at the moment. In Eternal War and Grand Tournament missions, you get to pick these objectives after seeing your opponent's army, and you can choose to have your army score points for either being in different table quarters, holding objectives or performing actions in certain ways, or killing certain elements of the opponent's army. The aim is that you can pick some ones that you can score very high points on, and then they kind of impact the way that the game's played out, as both you can try and score those points, and your opponent can try and deny you them while trying to further their own agendas. I think the system on the whole is quite a good one. It was basically borrowed from the ITC's system, and I think does tend to make competitive 40k games more balanced on the whole, as it means that both armies will be able to adapt to their own objectives. However, that's not to say that they can't be made better. I think one of the major issues that I've seen a few people not being too happy about, in the main obvious gap in the secondary objectives that require you to destroy things. The ones where you can get, say, 3 victory points for destroying enemy vehicles, or get 3 victory points per turn for killing more enemy units than you lose in your battle round. I know there'll always be a bit of an element of gaming the system with these, but I would argue that they're far better than kill points, where that could create some really unbalanced matchups. Say if you had a bunch of Imperial Knights versus an army that had multiple small units, the Imperial Knights were almost always going to win regardless of performance. So I definitely prefer it to that sort of system, but I think that we are missing a secondary objective that can be taken against armies with significant amount of elite units. At least in the Grand Tournament pack, there are reasonably good secondary objectives to pick up against a lot of the major matchups. If the opponent has 5 or more vehicles, typically the Bring It Down one is good. Titan Hunters is great against Knights and the like. Abhor the Witch can get you a maximum 15-point secondary with only killing 3 Psychers. Killing characters can be a good option. There's a good one for multiple small units, in killing more enemy units than you lose during a battle round, and huge hordes can be cut down by thin their ranks. The main problem is that some of the armies need some of the units on this list to function, where other armies, in particular Space Marines, can fairly easily put together a list that doesn't give up any one of these secondaries to the maximum. I think that the secondaries can be really punishing to armies such as Imperial Guard, who tend to check pretty much all of these boxes depending on exactly what they bring. Guard are incentivized to bring quite a lot of cheap armor, which makes the vehicle one really easy to do. If they're playing infantry lists, typically you'd want 5 or more characters and possibly multiple psychers, and infantry-based lists also tend to be quite multiple small unit intensive as well, making the one where you kill more units than your opponent another easy pick. Basically, in a lot of guard builds, the opposing player is going to be spoiled for choice for exactly what sort of kill something objectives they want to take. On the other hand, if you go the other way, if you take a Space Marine army, only take a couple of characters, and build most of your list around models with 3 wounds, things like Eradicators, Blade Guard, Vanguard Vets, or Terminators, all of which are very decent units in their own right, the Space Marine player is going to give up almost none of these secondary objectives. Maybe he'll get a few points against their characters if they did go quite heavy on them, but I think it's quite easy to make a good Space Marine list with only 2 or 3 characters. I think really what's missing from this list is a secondary objective that activates against multi-wound, multi-model units, which would hopefully function against anything from Intercessors to Blade Guard Veterans or Vanguard Vets. I think they just need something similar to the Gangbusters secondary objective that was used by the ITC in ages past, to cover the heavy infantry niche that Space Marines can spam an entire army out of, and be very happy in not giving up any secondaries. I think one of the other potential shortfalls for secondary objectives comes in the form of the faction-specific ones that are coming out in each codex. I did make a video on this earlier in the year, being slightly concerned as to how powerful they might be, as it could be one of the easiest ways to make a game very slanted in favour of one army if one army is working to a different set of objectives, and they have access to a secondary that's really easy to max that their opponent just can't take. We've only got some of the information so far. We've seen the Space Marine Codex, and Blood Angels, Space Wolves and Deathwatch, and also the Necron ones. For the most part, I'd say that they haven't gone too mad with them. Most of them seem to be in line with the core book, but there are a few exceptions that do seem quite easy. I think one of the main problems with this is the Codex rollout. Games Workshop releasing things the way they do means that we're not going to get all the rules all at once. They're going to come out bit by bit across 9th edition, so some armies could be waiting a very, very long time for their faction-specific secondaries, and could be playing against armies that all have theirs. I'm certainly not saying that you need to have your own faction-specific secondaries to compete. Armies like Harlequins, Chaos Demons, and Sisters of Battle are doing absolutely fine without them, but in terms of scoring points at least, having more options is stronger than not having them, so it is one buff that they'll be missing out on. It will become progressively less of a problem as more and more factions get theirs, but at the moment it could be quite annoying if you're facing against Space Marines, for example, where they have lots of choices of secondaries and your book doesn't. It also does seem that Games Workshop aren't handing out all their secondary options equally. It seems like armies such as Death Watch, Blood Angels and Space Wolves will all be getting more objectives than anyone else. They all have access to the 3 from the core Space Marine book, plus the additional ones from their own codex. All of those books have about 7 objectives to choose from, where I suspect that most other factions are just going to be getting around 4, like the Necrons got. To be honest though, if they're written well, then it doesn't really matter too much, but I think that they just have to be really careful, as one easy one in any one codex is just going to make that army pick it pretty much all the time. A few of them already do seem very good. Blood Angels have Relentless Assault, which could be really easy to achieve against an army that isn't that mobile. They just have to have more Blood Angels units in the opponent's drop zone than the opponent has in theirs. You get 4 victory points per turn with that, which means that it could be quite an easy one to max. Space Marines' Oaths of Moment do seem really powerful as well. You get 2 victory points at the end of each battle round if there's an Adeptus Astartes unit within 6 inches of the centre of the table, and on top of that you also get a chance to score even more points for killing monsters and not falling back with your Space Marines. Provided you've got some durable units that can bully their way to the centre, it seems like that one's going to be very easy as well. Finally, Space Wolves can pick up victory points just by making charges, which they're pretty much always going to want to do. Warrior's Pride can give you 3 victory points every turn that you have 2 Space Wolf units make a charge, or end the turn in engagement range. Might be kind of hard to max, as you might not always get it on the first or last battle round, but provided your army isn't just obliterated straight off the table, it would likely be quite hard to avoid scoring a decent amount of points on this secondary if you're playing with a fair bunch of assault troops. So I'd be very interested in hearing what you think about the new secondaries. Do we need an anti-elite secondary objective to help close some loopholes for some armies? And are the faction-specific ones really all that big a deal, or are they very small gains compared with winning and losing primaries? I look forward to having a read of your thoughts down in the comments below. If you've enjoyed the video, feel free to subscribe to Auspex Tactics, where we have regular 40k tactics content coming out pretty much every day. Finally, if you have been enjoying the videos on the channel, I would just like to mention that the channel has a Patreon page, which you can find down in the video description. Making all of these videos does take a fair amount of time, so if you are enjoying regularly, then any support is massively appreciated to help keep them coming. Channel patrons do get a fair few advantages, such as seeing certain videos early before anyone else, regular votes to see what sort of things come next on the channel, and automatic entry into the Auspex Tactics prize giveaway, which happens every month. If any of that sounds good to you, or you'd just like to help support the channel, then the link is down in the video description. In any case, a massive thank you for listening, and I'll hope to see you guys next time.